Alright guys, moving on to lesson number 2, which is graphing inequalities. So we're going to go ahead and flip to this page. It has graphing inequalities at the top. Well, let's go ahead and talk about everything that's in this box. These are our steps to graphing inequalities. Okay, the first step is determining if it has an open or a closed circle. Okay, it's going to have an open circle if it uses the less than or greater than symbol, and it's going to have a closed dot if it has that equal to line under it. And the next thing is, determining what way your arrow goes. So you have to find a test point, and if it's, true or false, you'll graph accordingly. So let's go ahead and look at our first example. So remember, our first step, as I said, was to figure out if it is an open or a closed circle. Well, as we can see for this inequality, it does not have the equal to sign under it, so it's going to be an open. It's going to be an open circle at 3. So I'm going to go over here on my graph and draw a nice open circle. Okay, step 2 is telling me to test 0. So what that means is I'm plugging in 0 for x, and I'm determining if it's that true or false. So if this one, I can see that 0 is greater than 3. Well, that's not true. That's false. And because that is false, that means I'm pointing away from 0. Okay, so I'm pointing away from 0, which is in this direction. So I've got my open dot, and I have my arrow pointing away from 0. Okay, so there's my first example. Let's do that same process for number 2. Well, let's look. We've got this inequality here. X is less than or equal to 2. So we got to figure out if it's an open or closed circle. So if we see that line is under that inequality, that means we're doing a closed circle. And that closed circle is going to be at 2 because that's the number that the inequality is using. So I'm going to go over to 2. I'm going to draw my closed circle. Alright, next thing I'm doing is testing 0. So I plug in 0 for x. I see that 0 is less than 2. Well, that's totes true. Duh. And that means I'm going to do my new line pointing to 0. So I want to go over 0 because it is true. So there's my inequality for my second one. Now let's do it again. Let's do it again for number 3. So this one I already kind of filled some stuff in for us because I think you'll start to, find that pattern. So with this inequality, I've got x is greater than 0. So that means we're going to have an open circle at 0. Well, if you see this graph, it's not labeled. So let's go ahead and label it. We've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we have -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. I just ran out of room under, so if you'd like to write your numbers under, that's also fine. So we are going to have that open circle at 0. So here we go. And then the next thing is plugging in 0. But if you see in this problem, 0 is the number that we're using, so we have to pick another number. Let's just pick 1. So let's plug in 1 for x. So 1 is greater than 0. Well, that is true, so I want to go over 1 with my arrow. I want to make sure it includes 1 because it is true. Okay, so there's 3 examples. Well, let's keep going and try a couple more. I'm not going to have those, guided notes for the next couple just because I want us to start getting the hang of it. So let's see, our next one. We've got x is less than -2. So first step, you got to determine open or closed circle. This one does not have a line under it, so we're going to have an open. We're going to have an open circle at -2. So as you can see, my number line is not labeled, so I need to label it. So I'm going to have 1, or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm going to do my negative numbers, which is -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. Okay, well we know that we're having an open circle at -2. So there's my open circle. Next thing I'm doing is I'm plugging in 0 for x. So I've got 0 is less than -2. So what that means is it's saying -2 is bigger than 0, and that is false. That is false. Not a good thing. So we do not want to include 0. We don't want to draw our arrow towards 0. We want to point it away from 0. All right, let's keep going. All right, we got our next inequality. We got x is greater than or equal to -4. So first step, open or closed, and we can tell that this one is going to be a closed circle at -4. Well, again, my line's not labeled, so let's do it. We got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -1, -2. Can't draw my 2. There we go. -3, -4, -5. Here we go. So I have a closed circle at -4. All right, next thing I'm doing is I'm plugging in 0 for x. So I have 0 is greater than or equal to -4. True or false? So it's saying 0 is bigger than -4. Well, that is totes true. True. There we go. So that means I want to include 0 under my line. I want to go towards 0 when I graph my inequality. Okay, it looks like we have about 2 more problems, so let's go ahead and tackle those. Alright, so for our next one, first step, open or close circle. And hopefully you guys are starting to get the hang of it, that this one's going to be closed. And it's going to be at 12. So this one going to look a little different. So my suggestion is when you are labeling this number line is that you start with 12. So let's just say, okay, hey, I'm going to put 12 right here. And then we know we're going to go 13, and then 14, and then 15, and then 16. Doesn't matter where 12 is on your number line, you just have to make sure you put it in one spot and then go from there to create your other numbers. Remember, this one, you're adding. And in this direction, you'll be subtracting. So we'll have 12, 11. Then we have 10. Then we have 9, 8, 7, 6. Okay? So there's our number line. Well, we already figured out that it's a closed circle at 12. So let's go ahead and draw that closed circle. Okay, we have our circle. Let's go ahead and plug in 0 for x. So I have 0 is less than or equal to 12. And that is true. So we want to include 0, which we know is in this direction. It's everything less than 12. You're including numbers that are less than what's given. All right, looks like now we have 2 more. Sorry, I didn't see that last one. All right, so for this one, we've got -31. So keep in mind, the inequality does not have a line under it, so that's going to be an open circle at -31. Well, let's plot -31 over here. So I've got -31. And keep in mind, negative numbers are different. So I'm going to have a -32 going this way, then -33, then -34, okay, and so on. Okay, on this way I've got -30, and then -29, so on. Okay, so be sure to fill those in, but I just want you to see that pattern of how we're doing it. So we're having an open circle at -31. So there's my open circle. Well, let's go ahead and plug in 0. So I have 0 is greater than -31. So what that's saying is 0 is bigger than that, which is true, because it's including numbers that are bigger than -31. So I want to point my arrow towards 0, which I know is going to be in that direction. Okay, so there's my inequality, and I have one more left. One more. First step, open or closed, and we can see that this one's going to be a closed, because it has that line under it. It's going to be at -10 too. So let's do our graph. We've got -10, -9, -8, -7, -6, okay, -11, -12, -13, -14, -15, -16. Okay, I filled that entire one in so we can see how negative numbers work. Okay, so when I'm doing a closed circle at -10, here we go. Well, now let's go ahead and do our arrow. We plug in 0 is greater than or equal to -10. That's true, so we would include 0 in our line. So we're drawing over the numbers that are bigger than -10. Okay, well this is all for graphing inequalities. Oh, look at the beautiful colors. Okay, if you are still struggling with this, be sure to ask your teacher for help. But we are done with this video, so go ahead, lesson 2, cross off your booklet, try your practice, and then good luck on your quiz. Adios!